Hello everyone, welcome to the episode 17 of SoLeadSaturday. The guest we have today, Scott Taylor, he created his own brand, The Data Whisperer. He is a strategic advisor. He has 20K plus data management community following him. He is a master of data storytelling as well as a professional speaker. Recently on Thinker 360, he has been recognized as #1 thought leader in big data space. So let's welcome him and hear his career journey. How did he find his passion and manage to be one of the leaders in the areas he is passionate about? So welcome, Scott, and thank you for being my guest on SoLeadSaturday podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here in episode 17.
Yes.
I was born on the 17th.
Oh,
so
that's
this is
great.
perfect.
Me too. Me too.
There we go. It's feeling good already here. This is going well already. So
to start with, just let's start with, your recent recognition being ranking #1 on Thinker 360.
number one. We're number one. Yes, it's not a competition, really. So yeah, this great site, Thinker 360, they look at global thought leaders across, I don't know, maybe 20 categories.
Mm-hmm.
And I filled in all my stuff. I put in all my assets. They have this proprietary scoring program, and I ended up being #1. So, we're #1. So happy to be thrilled to actually be in the company of some great folks out there. So whether I'm #1 or 2 or 10, I'm just glad to be on the list.
That's great, actually. So congratulations on that. Moving to the next question is about that, you do lots of things, which I introduced you as. So what do you enjoy the most and why?
I love talking to people. So in case you can't tell, so I'm, I know we're going to get a little stir crazy here with all our hunkering down, but I love talking to people about data, telling stories about data, interacting with people, hearing their stories. Everybody's got a story. So it's great to hear what they've got to say.
That's great. And when did you realize your passion towards data?
It was early on. I was at a small data brand, at a company that's now part of Nielsen. So one of the great, most iconic data companies ever, period. Ever. They're the, certainly top notch and a great brand that sustained itself for a long, long time. And I started selling. I started off on the sales side. So I'm not technical at all. There's no coding. I can't talk about Panda. I don't know any of that stuff. I know how to spin the story. I'm more the why than the how. So that's a good way to think about it.
Okay. And then when we talk about your brand, The Data Whisperer, it's like kind of a unique, like what does it exactly stand for?
What does it stand for? So self-described, The Data Whisperers. You can probably already tell, spoiler alert, I don't do much whispering, not in real life. So it's more metaphorical and it helps calm data down. That's the way I think about it. So if you think about horse whispering, dog whispering, data is big, it's unruly, it's unstructured, it's messy, it's dirty, it's corrupt, it's got to get calmed down. So that's my point of view around that. And actually anybody in the data management space, any practitioner out there, they are a data whisperer themselves. So you've got to calm it down. You've got to tease out the insight. You have to get it to behave. You have to train it. You have to get it to a point where you can help drive the business. And so this brand that I just started assigning to myself a couple of years ago really caught on. People, it seems to resonate with folks. It certainly gives them a smile when they read that on my badge at a convention. They go, oh, that's cute. What is that? So
yeah, that's really, actually, I also got attracted towards that. Like, so it's really unique.
There's a bunch of us. If you search Data Whisperer, you'll find a number of people who have it. I like to say I'm the Data Whisperer. So I try that. But, there's plenty of room for all of us.
Yes, that's true. And then you are a keynote speaker. You have been like a keynote speaker for Dataversity, actually, which is like, again, the e-learning platform, I guess. So would you like to share your experience with us?
Well, the Dataversity experience isn't so wonderful because the thing got canceled. So it was supposed to be next week. And I was going to be in front of 1,000 people, one of the biggest crowds I've ever been in front of. Talk, and they're all hardcore practitioners in the data space. So I knew they were my people here. This was going to be tremendous. I'll be nice and inspiring. I'll be dramatic. I'll be humorous. I'll be passionate. I'll be all those things that I try and bring to the party when I get out there. But unfortunately, it got canceled. So we're going to do it virtually, which is nice, but it's not the same. As we all know, it's not the same being there physically, but they're a great group. I've done a couple of their conferences before,
Mhm.
and I speak with a lot of different in all kinds of different arenas, all about the same thing, which is the value and the strategic importance of proper data management. That's what I'm all about.
Okay, that's great. And you already mentioned that you are more or like, I focus on business alignment and the strategic why rather than the system implementation and technical how. So, would you like to elaborate more on that? Like you said that you are not a technical person, but why like a strategic thinking like is more important actually when it comes to this data field or any field actually?
Yeah, there's a balance. I'm the why, not the how. That's
Mm-hmm,
it. And I use that, as you can tell. I can spin a tale, I can twist a phrase, I can position things. That's really my expertise is,
mm-hmm,
getting people to understand the value. And that has to come through storytelling. That has to come through articulating in their language in a way that's accessible and resonates with them. But I'm more the why because I'm not a practitioner. I don't get, if you think of the classic design phases of databases and software, conceptual, logical, physical, right?
mm-hmm,
So I am awesome at conceptual. I can get technically through logical, but I don't get physical. I don't touch anything. So there's a lot of practitioners out there. They're great at what they do. They get it done.
mm-hmm,
And you need both. Okay. You need the why and the how. If you just have the how, and people don't know why, then you're wasting your effort. If you just have the why and you don't know how, then you're just making stuff up almost. So you've got to have this balance. I like to think of it as sizzle and steak.
mm-hmm,
So you want to have both. You want to have this compelling narrative
mm-hmm,
and technical accuracy. Those things need to come together in this beautiful Venn diagram way. But I am much more okay getting people in the room, getting them interested. And when you're trying to get support of business leadership and enterprise stakeholders, many of them really don't care how you're going to get that stuff done.
mm-hmm,
Your peers do. It's important, don't get me wrong, but when you're talking to the CEO, they
mm-hmm,
do not want to hear about your latest reference data architecture or
mm-hmm,
all the wonderful steps you took to build this algorithm. I hate to break it to you, they don't care. So what they care about is, what's this going to do for my business?
mm-hmm.
Why is this going to help me? And so that's really what I focus on. We all play a part. I play that one. I think I play it particularly well, but you got to know your part and then you got to play it well.
Actually, I'm also interested. I feel like why is moreover like a business needs, stands for business needs, why it is needed. And then how is moreover like a implementation of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. A lot of people, though, when they come up, they start talking about the how and they focus on the how. They
yeah,
focus on the tools, they focus on
before
the
asking why.
implementation. You don't have business support, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So moving to your data management, actually, why do you think data management is important?
It's the foundation.
Yeah.
You don't have the ability to do analytics without good data.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the ability to implement all these wonderful things that people talk about. With a big software platform, it's a new social media. I mean, data is everywhere, right? We all know that. And the people who are succeeding the best in most categories are the ones who are able to get the value out of their data at scale. Scale is an important word.
Mm-hmm.
And you literally physically absolutely cannot do that without proper data management. It just doesn't happen by itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I call it the foundation. It's not a unique word to me, but that's a good way to articulate it to folks who don't understand it. It's the foundation
Mm-hmm.
that all these other things are built on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me as well. So, uh,
Good.
yeah, so because I also work in the data space, so
Right.
definitely. And then moving to the similar, like on the same line, along the same line, it is moreover like when we see that data management is very important nowadays. What are the strategies or the steps involved actually at the organization level when it comes to managing the data?
In it, on this, so on the strategy side, you mean how would people
Yeah,
understand it, or how do you put it together, or
how we will gather it actually moreover on the structuring part, like when we think about the implementation, right, we have to first structure it in a way. So it is more or like a collection or the gathering, or how organizations has to be more structured when it comes to the data.
I mean, I talk about data structure a lot because it's master data is structured data. And so I really harp on this idea that structured data works harder than unstructured data,
Mm-hmm,
period.
mm-hmm,
People pick at me about that because it's like, oh, they always look at the edge cases. So people find exceptions to what I say all the time. I'll just give that as a disclaimer. And I'm focused on the big stuff in the middle. What most people do
mm-hmm,
most of the time with most of their data, that's the big area where I focus on. So you can always find an exception to what I'm talking about. But the structure part I think is important because that gives, in my experience, as I start to explain the value of master data, metadata, reference data, MDM, RDM, data governance, data management, data stewardship, all those data, things within this big bucket called data management.
mm-hmm,
A big outcome of that is highly structured, well-governed, expertly stewarded data that will then enable a lot of other things.
mm-hmm,
So I've been selling data for my whole career, or selling the idea of data for my entire career. And you need to find tools and stories and parables and
mm-hmm.
analogies and ways to talk about it. So in the master data space, I talk about something called the 4 C's.
Yeah. Yeah, we will talk
So,
about that. Actually, we have that question. Okay.
oh, do you want me to wait till
So
you get to that question?
before
Okay.
that, I would like to cover the question, which is like, you are an influencer as well as the subject matter expert. So you represented lots of world's most iconic business data brands, including Dun and Bradstreet, Nielsen, Microsoft, WPP, Cantor, and in variety of strategic marketing, GTM, innovation, and consulting roles.
That's
So you
me.
are everywhere, like, yeah. So would you like to share more about that when it comes to handling like different brands?
So I've worked with these brands, and almost all of them, what
Mm-hmm,
I did was help them actually tell their data story better.
mm-hmm,
So all around the master data, all around the structured data.
mm-hmm,
But both Nielsen and, to a great ironic extent, Dun and Bradstreet didn't really position and articulate the value of these data assets in a way that resonated with the marketplace at large.
mm-hmm.
So they're at Nielsen, we didn't really know what we had. So
Yeah.
it was a small business. It was something that, by listening to our customers, we found out what they really wanted to do with it rather than what we were telling them that they should do with it. And that's important for any offering and anybody who represents anything. Listen to your customers.
Mhm,
And when they're saying, this stuff works really well when you use it this way, which isn't something you told us, help us do that better. If you listen right, you go, okay, wow, that's good. Okay, let's develop that. That's a really cool thing. That's where a lot of innovation comes from your customers going, hey, if you turned it this way or tried it this way or did something else with it, it would be different. And the main thing that people did with this data that I had at Nielsen that was different than what we were selling was we were selling it basically for reporting.
mhm,
Here's where everything that we track is.
yeah.
What these customers were telling us was we can put the hierarchy, the structure you have on this data into operation, into production, to help enable a lot of really important
Mhm,
processes, workflows, analytics,
mhm,
interoperability, use
mhm,
cases. And I realized, wow, that is worth a whole lot more than what we were doing with it.
yeah.
And that seems a lot more, certainly a lot stickier,
Mhm.
and you can get a lot more embedded. So for me, at the Nielsen experience, was actually creating a brand around this, which was really thrilling.
Oh.
At Dun and Bradstreet, kind of the opposite story. They had this master data service. They had huge clients. This is number 2 business. So most people know D&B as the credit service,
Mhm,
right? The second biggest business by revenue was what their customers would call master data. D&B didn't call it master data before I got there. So I can take some minor credit here. If you go up in the D&B website and you see the term master data, it's because of the work I did there. And so for me in that place, it was kind of repositioning
mhm, mhm,
what they already did in a way that validated what their biggest customers were doing with it, but also opened up the market to other people who didn't
mhm,
realize it. I mean, I had an early meeting with the CEO. And so I think I'm pretty good at talking to high level folks because I get to the point, I can speak clearly, I listen, I'm there for a particular reason. We can get into the tips on that later if you want. But we had 20 people in the room, which is classic for D&B at the time. And he understood that there was an opportunity there. And he asked me, he said, what should we do? I said, you should put a sign on the door. Okay. Put a sign on the door that we're in this business, because the people who know we do it are here, but most people just drive right by the shop.
Mhm.
And it was as simple as that. Put it on the website. Be declarative about it, is what I told people and told the marketing folks. Show that you're a leader in this space, which they certainly by default really are. And but it was crazy because you're talking with marketing people, and I got all kinds of opinions on some marketing people for sure, depending on kind of where their head's at, what they're trying to do. They're all trying to make things more exciting. It's by nature, that's what marketing's all about. But I literally had some of the marketing people say, we don't want to call it master data. We don't like your name for that. We don't like that name. I said, it's not my name. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not my idea. I'm not coming up with a cool name called master data. I'm actually telling you what the technical term for what this deliverable is. And the fun part was anybody in operations was already behind me. The CIO, the chief data officer, all of these folks. Certainly, the more technical they were at D&B, the more they understood that I was bringing a voice to something that didn't have it. The
Mhm.
less technical they were, or distracted on some other areas, or really focused on other areas of business, the less they understood it. So it was a crazy experience there. But trying to reshape a global brand,
Mhm.
not in its entirety, but just for this little niche that, again, they really dominated,
Mhm.
was it was an amazing and ridiculous experience every day, is the best way I can put it, because there's a lot of different ups and downs and roller coasters and fights you got to fight to get people to understand this
Mhm.
point of view. So
Yeah. So I can see in your profile, there is one, like, level where you worked as a DNB master data evangelist, market
that
development and innovation.
right.
So was that similar? Was that related to these brands, or this was the different
No,
history?
that's exactly what I just described. That
Yeah.
was my title at D&B when I was doing what I just described about kind of getting their strategy and their positioning correct
Mm-hmm.
around what they already did. But
Yeah.
I had one of their biggest customers come to me and say, we know why we're buying it. They don't know why they're selling it to us.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough conversation to be on the wrong side of. And there were a lot of different folks there who understood it. There was a smattering of salespeople, and still are. They're still doing it, that understood it and listened to the customers and leaned into it. And then there was a whole swath of folks who were just being introduced to it. So it was kind of fun to do the enablement and the training and the road shows. I traveled the world with them, and both on the customer side and on the partner side, as well as kind of the internal stuff. So I had a ball there most of the time, just spreading the word. And that's where the evangelism part came in. If you want to be an evangelist, and if people out there want to be an evangelist, again, a business evangelist, religious evangelism is a different topic area. I'm not into in that part of the world, but in terms of sort of business evangelism, you need to be able to do two things for folks. You got to get them to believe,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got to get them to practice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually true for all evangelism. So I felt discount my previous comment there before, but that's right. They have to believe. They have to see something they didn't see before. You have to get people to go from "I
Mm-hmm.
have no idea what you're talking about" to "How can we live without this?" So that's the journey you got to take everybody on.
Yeah, that's true. And then, like, innovation is always a part of a business, right? Business person, actually, I feel whenever it comes to innovation or the creativity or any area you person is interested in, actually, it is more important to be creative so that you can grow faster um, than just doing the mundane job. If you are more creative or innovative, uh, you grow faster actually in the area you are passionate about.
Yeah, I think I tend to score pretty high on the creative stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of my sweet spot is
Yeah, that
just
I can see.
finding the, yeah. Can you tell already? Yeah, I think you
I
can tell.
can see
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Which makes me not very good at things like deadlines. Okay. So I'm
that's
always,
true.
other more structured, I'm not a good process person. So
So
I'll admit
creativity
my
is
weaknesses
time
right
bound
here.
actually. Like sometimes you have to follow, but it is more like creativity and the innovation never follows the time.
Yeah. I'm always trying to sort of push the
Yeah,
edge on it, but
yeah,
it's a balance.
yeah. And then now moving to your actually, I saw your post along the like 5 pillars and 4 C's of master data. So
Hmm.
would you like to elaborate on that part?
Yeah, those are just structures. Those are just sort of frameworks I use to help describe what I'm talking about. So the 4 C's we were talking about before, if you have to describe master data to somebody, if you have to structure a relationship, and most master data is about the relationships a business has with customers, partners, prospects.
Mhm,
It could be about their products, services, offerings, their assets, their the things they make, the people they sell to, buy from, partner with. Those are all the relationships an enterprise has. So if you want to structure a relationship, you you apply, and again, this is not reference data architecture here. This is a way to explain it to a bunch of business people.
mhm,
You come up with this pithy thing, which I did, which is the 4 C's: code, company, category, and country. And so code means every entity, every record has a code, has a unique identifier,
mhm, mhm,
makes it unique, and at least in that system. Every record should have a hierarchy, some
mhm,
kind of company, parent child relationship, ship to, build to, plan to, sell to, whatever levels the business works at. There's some hierarchy structure on there. You need to know what kind of thing it is. So that's where category comes in,
mhm,
right? What category, what segment, what genre, what can people divide this stuff differently, but you always need to know what kind of something is, what kind of thing something is. And then you need, just because they all start with C, I pick country or some form of geography.
mm,
So you apply these 4 C's to your data, and you know where something is, you know what kind of thing it is, you know who owns it, and you know it's unique. And that makes a tremendous number of data problems go away.
yeah.
The
I feel it
thing,
is again related to the business problem, right? Because demographic goes with the density distribution, and then when we talk about the category, it is always the classification.
right?
So definitely, data management part should include those things.
I mean, those are really, again, those are like the four
Yeah.
horsemen here. Those are basic foundational stuff. And they ask questions like, okay, we're in this market.
Mm-hmm,
What categories are we, do our customers like best? You know, and there's a lot, that's a business question.
mm-hmm,
But to answer that business question accurately, you have to have an accurate, unduplicated count of your customers. You need to know that they roll up in some kind of hierarchy. You need to know the segmentation.
yes.
And then somebody said, okay, in this market, in the New York market, in Chicago, in EMEA, whatever the definition of the market is, you need that consistent form of geography. So I come back to that a lot, and those end up defining the dimensions that a lot of reporting is based on: customer reporting,
Yes.
market share reporting, penetration analysis, targeting, all that stuff's based on these 4 C's. You start there. That's my
Mm-hmm,
feeling. And the 5 pillars are value, structure, connectability, coverage, and quality. And just going through them really quickly, it's a way to assess and kind of, again, describe. You might call it data governance. You might call it why we do this or how we do this. Again, I don't go into the process itself, but you got to get people to understand what are the important things about managing data.
mm-hmm,
The first one being of value, of course. Does it bring value to the business? Is it fit for purpose? Does it help me make decisions at scale?
mm-hmm,
That's what people want to do. They want to make decisions at scale. You have a structure, again, code, company, category, country, call it whatever you want. That's a structure that people can use, but everybody's got one. You go into these organizations, they have one. I learned this by just seeing the same thing over and over and over again
mm-hmm,
in different places, and then trying to find a more generic, common way to describe it. That was my exercise.
mm-hmm,
And then connectability just means it's integratable across your silos and across other systems and across other partners. Does it have coverage of your business? And then what's the quality? And I put quality last because most people start with it. Again, I like to be a little counter to intuitive there. But quality of those 5 things is the most emotional, subjective topic. And most people start with quality. They march in their leaders' office, our data quality is no good. We don't have good, what are you talking about? Calm down here. So I counsel people to not lead with quality because it can be so emotional and because it can be so subjective. So start with value, start
Mm,
with structure. What's more impactful when you're talking to a CEO? The quality of our data isn't very good, or we don't have a common structure for our customer information. And you're talking about doing customer 360 and transforming our CS experience, and we don't have the data to back it up. So that's a better conversation than our quality should really improve.
yeah, that's true. Actually, a lot of noise around data quality. Like, we have the bad data. How much is the bad data cost? But definitely, that is something giving structure first, and then coming to the data quality makes sense.
Those are all, and again, quality is valid. What is the cost of bad data is valid, but they've been trying to tell that story for decades,
Mhm,
and we're still in the mess we're in. So if that story was really resonating, and there's some real good, awesome, world-class practitioners who spend a lot of time on that story, my observation is if it worked, then
mhm,
why are people literally today still talking about data silos and they can't integrate? No, they don't have a common definition and stuff doesn't work. So
yeah,
that story is not getting through. It's
yes.
not getting through. So
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely, that is a very important point that you highlighted. So moving to the next question is about your data storytelling. Actually, you call yourself a master of data storytelling, and I can see that actually. So, what is the important aspect actually when it comes to data storytelling?
I have my sign in the back here. Tell me your data story. Um, to create some sort of action, to get a call to action, to get people to do something with your data.
Mm-hmm.
And when you formulate a data story, there's lots of stories out there. First of all, it should be nonfiction. Okay. If you want to categorize it, shouldn't be a tragedy. Maybe it's got a little comedic piece to it there. Maybe it's an epic, but in all seriousness, it's actually some form of pitch. Okay. You're pitching somebody, you're trying to create, you've got a call to action. You're trying to close them on some sort of activity. Is it funding? Is it making a decision of some sort? And that framework for that is really a straight old pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned sales door to door. And literally the first thing I ever sold door to door, which was a ridiculous product,
Mm-hmm.
but somehow the training was really good and it stuck with me my entire career. And the trainer, that is guy who owned the company, said every sale is divided into 4 distinct phases:
Mm-hmm.
attention,
Mm-hmm.
interest, desire, and close. And you have to move through each of them sequentially. You can't skip any steps. If you do, you're not going to complete the sale. And so I take that. I mean, I live that every day. You can't get somebody interested in something until you get their attention.
Yeah.
You can't close them on a commitment until they want it.
Mm-hmm.
So moving through that process for me is a bunch of signposts that say, okay, let's get there. It could happen in a minute. It could happen in 5 months. It could take 2 years, but you got to build through, okay, did we get their attention? So hello over there. Do they have an interest in what we're talking about? Sure. Come on in. Let's hear about it. Do they have a desire? Oh, I really want this. This really seems to fill my need.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can get, all right, let's have a commitment. That can happen when you're selling something externally or when you're selling something internally. But data storytelling for me is at its core, it's the soft skill of selling.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then, like whenever we deal with the business, right, you have like always a lot of data available, information available. So what would be like a strategy to structure the information always before going for like, visualization or going for your data storytelling?
So I don't do the visualization part because I find that's more analytics.
Mm-hmm.
But when I help, so again, I help people tell their data story. So I'm working with a couple companies right now, enterprises
Mm-hmm.
that have data management programs that are not getting enough support.
Mm-hmm.
and aren't getting enough engagement in a variety of ways. That could be monetary engagement, they're not getting the funding, or it could be just executional engagement, they're not getting support in the field and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So to structure that,
Mm-hmm.
you have to talk about the art of the possible. Okay, here's what the company is trying to do, and here's how data is enabling that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of folks tend to work on some really cool data project and they go, look, isn't this wonderful? But it doesn't relate to where the business is going. And so when you try to frame the story, in my experience, and again, people might find other things that they've done, but in my experience, which is pretty vast and, got a lot of miles on the road on this, is you aim at one of or more of three buckets that most things that companies focus on. How do we grow the business? How do we improve the business? How do we protect the business?
Mm-hmm.
Grow, improve, protect. All right. So grow, that's the funnest one. That's the one everybody wants, right? That's more money. That's more sales. That's it. That's expansion. That's a lot of that's really why companies are in business to grow. So that's why they're in business.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in business to improve and protect their own businesses. That just comes along, right? So, but you start with the growth thing. Can you find that somewhere? Does it enable some sort of efficiency play? Those are important. Operational efficiencies, savings. How do we do things more quickly? How do we do them more seamlessly? How do we scale them? Again, you get this scale process in there. So that's critical. And then protect. How do we mitigate risk?
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's an absolute data story going on everywhere about, okay, how do we make sure we are in compliance with privacy regulations? That is a master data story at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
How do we protect this data? How do we know authentic identity? How do we make sure we understand who should see what, when, where, and how?
Mm-hmm.
So mitigate risk, operational efficiency, grow the business. The beauty, the miracle part of master data is it can actually do all three at the same time. So not a lot of efforts that a company can do all three things at the same time. But if you're in the data management space in your enterprise, you have the opportunity to help it grow, improve, and protect. And that's unusual even for a department to be able to do all three of those at the same time.
Yeah, I feel mitigation might be the more hurdle, like when it comes to managing the risk management. You have to have the strong system to protect your data. When it
Yeah.
comes to finance sector or the healthcare or the pharma, yeah. So
Yeah. It's all tough, so it's there's different challenges based on different parts of it, but yeah, it's all,
mm-hmm.
it's all a challenge. And the stakes are, right today are always higher on risk, right? If you make a mistake, you data breach, you can blow your whole business. If you send the wrong ads
Mm-hmm.
to the wrong people and they don't buy something from you,
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of risk there, right? You just wasted some time, probably more your own than theirs. But if you don't have a strong data governance and data protection program, then you can be in really deep trouble.
So moving to the next question is about, like, you have been a consultant like a longer time. So what are the important skills a consultant should have?
That's a great question, because when I first started off as a consultant, being a salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
moving from sales to consultancy, sales and marketing, and I was a leader at Nielsen and ran a team, and then I moved in sort of a boutique consultancy, went on my own, started doing stuff. And I found I had to change. I had to say more of what I was thinking in a more confrontational way. I don't mean aggressively confrontational, but when you're selling, you tend to want everybody to agree, right? You're moving along a process. Doesn't mean you're making stuff up and it's not true. That's my truth hat there. But your attitude's a little different. Once I got into the consulting side, I realized I had to bring a different opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I had to bring a different point of view. They didn't hire me to agree with what they were doing. That hit me fairly squarely in the face, luckily early on, because I got successful at it. But it was like, yeah, they want me to say, you know what? I don't think this is going to work. And here's why. Or I'm the guy in the room, the whole company's there. And, you got to be the one to go, did you look at it this way? And so you have to have the courage to do that.
Mm,
And you have to have the intellect to sort of assess what's going on. And in my case, because I was a boutique, fairly quickly, and come up with a point of view. Some of the funnest projects I had, and I'd still do them if we had the people have the appetite for it, is literally a 1-day project where you come in the morning, you know very little about what they're doing, you learn it, and by the end of the day, you got to give some observations that have some sort of value. And that's a challenge. You got to be on the whole time. You got to be listening. A key, and probably the second, and I would say they're tied for first. Bring a point of view, have a point of view, and then listen. You usually have to do it the other way around. You can't come up with a point of view unless you hear where they're at today. And so you got to just listen. And kind of a example of that, I took that into the next job I had, which was at Dun & Bradstreet. And kind of a funny anecdote was I was there for 3 months before I shared any observations of any significance with anybody. I was pretty sure that the problems they had I could solve. I was pretty sure I had the answer, and I ended up having the answer. But I listened for so long that some of the people I worked with were wondering what I was even doing there. I had this big meeting in Austin, and there's like 10 or 12 people we saw all day, and then this guy I worked with a lot. I land, and I get this big, long email, and it's like, almost, Scott, we're worried. We spent all this time, we did all these things, and I was kind of smiling because I knew I had something, and what I ended up having was pretty significant and really fun. But it was kind of interesting to get to a point where they thought, all right, this guy's an empty suit. He's got nothing here, right? So, was I listening too much? I don't think so, but it was just an interesting dynamic for so many people to think, does this guy got anything? I did. I delivered. Don't worry. But it was, it proved again for me that you got to listen to almost to the point where it hurts, and then then come out with it.
Yeah, and always it is like a communication as well. I feel you have to show the progress. So it is all about.
Even if coming in, and I did. I mean, 90% of what I brought in my head is where we went.
Yeah.
But you had to earn that right to be able to share that stuff. You can't just walk in and go, you know what, this is all terrible. We're going to rip it down and, start here. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten any engagement. People would not have been brought along. So.
No, I just feel like sometimes whenever you are on a project, like, people doesn't care about your accuracy or perfection. They just want the progress that, things are moving and it is working. That kind of situation, sometimes it happens whenever.
Yeah, I mean, I think accuracy is obviously important. That's
important, but immediately they don't want it. They are more looking for your progress. Like,
yeah,
that you are able to getting into the direction where you can deliver.
Right.
So, yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And moving to the next question is about how do you see the data trends actually evolving over the period of time, and where is the future leading according to you?
I'm actually of the opinion that nothing is changing.
Nothing is changing.
Nothing is changing from data management perspective in terms of the need and the value. What is changing is the importance, the urgency, the stakes. But what I mean by nothing is changing, sure, there's all kinds of new cool stuff today that didn't exist 10 years ago. It still needs data management to feed it. It still needs the accurate, high quality data to fuel those activities. So whatever the cool super stuff's happening now, and that is going to get replaced in 10 years with something else, that stuff's going to need data management too. And so I kind of sit back and go, all right, things about data, master data is macro trend agnostic as far as I'm concerned. So wherever people were, wherever they are today, wherever they're going next, they're still going to need this structured data about the most important entities in their business. I don't see how that changes. I don't see how business doesn't have customers anymore. I don't see how business doesn't have brands and products anymore or offerings, right? Those are absolutely mandatory to have a business. How those are transacted, how they're delivered, what people might do with them, what those things even are all in the future,
Mhm.
but they're still going to need customer data.
Yeah.
So I kind of sit back and go, okay, no matter what, nothing's going to replace it. You still need it. Are there different ways to get to that data? Sure. But people are in a world of hurt right now with their data more than they're bragging about how great they're doing with it.
Mm.
So there's a lot of basic foundational block and tackling stuff that needs to get done in enterprises around the basic block and tackling data they've got that run their business. And that's what you got to focus on. So I don't want to pop any big, trend bubbles, but hardware comes and goes, software comes and goes, data remains.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much. That was a good note. And moving towards your leadership style actually truly shows your passion towards the area that you are working in. So, what is your leadership style and any specific leader that you do follow?
I'd say, yes, you hit the P word there for sure. I get passionate. I get worked up about it. I get excited about it. I love to show my emotion about it, and when things aren't going well, I'm on the other side of it, right? So you've got that kind of creative dynamic of just being in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's very inspirational and sometimes it isn't. So, I try and lead with the kind of visionary aspects of where we could go. And I've worked for some world-class leaders. I'll tell you, like, probably one of the most inspirational and for me was a guy named Dave Calhoun. He's now CEO of Boeing. He's
Mm-hmm.
got quite a job that he's dealing with now. He came in as CEO of Nielsen,
Mm-hmm.
and he was one of the most accessible, down-to-earth, pragmatic guys I ever met. And he ripped through that company and changed, in a lot of ways, the nature of the company. And he was just, I would just go through fire for this guy. He just would had this way to communicate that he would modulate. And he was from GE, which is awesome management training. So he knew a lot of technique, but he had the goods too.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to really inspire certainly me to do things I didn't really think I would have the opportunity to do.
Mm-hmm.
And without him, I would not have the experience I have today that I can walk confidently into literally any enterprise on earth and say, let me tell you what I think your data problems are. And yeah, so he was great, great guy. And good luck to him on Boeing. He's gonna turn it around for sure.
Okay, I need to check it out. Actually, I'm not aware of. So definitely, I'll check out after this recording.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, moving to the last question of this podcast is more about the advice that you would like to give to the aspiring students or the professionals who are willing to enter into this data field or who are already into the data field and looking to grow in that field.
Learn your business. Learn the business that you're in. If you work for a company, it is impossible for you to know too much about what that company does and how it does it, why it does it, where it does it. So, yes, you've got to be great with data. That's your job. Just like if you were in sales, you got to be a good salesperson. If you were in finance, you got to be a good finance person.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't know too much about your business. And it's almost a cliche today to say, okay, data's got to add value to the business. But cliches exist for a purpose. They are just things that people said a billion times and they're generally right. So that would be my number one piece of advice. And underneath that,
Mm-hmm.
I talked a lot about listening. I talked a lot about understanding and having a point of view. It's important to have a point of view. I talked a lot about using creativity. I talked a lot about passion and initiative. But if there's a thing, you can roll all that up and say, okay, I assume if you're getting in the data business, you understand data. You'll go learn Python and R and code and all these other wonderful things that I have no clue how to do. But none of that matters if you don't show how it affects the business.
Yes.
And learn your business. And there will be people who will help you. They'll teach you. They'll bring you in. they'll love to tell you about the business.
Mm.
And find those people, have them mentor you, read everything you can. If it's a public company, it's particularly easy to understand a business. Go watch the investor day presentation, read the annual report, understand what your company does.
Yeah.
You will immediately jump to the top at least 25% of folks in your organization who have an holistic understanding of what you do. So
Yeah.
there's my piece of advice. Learn the business you're in.
Yeah, it's a very specific, and it is like, I feel like that is very important to understand, because a lot of time you are just stuck with the skill set that you are working on, your technical skills, or problem solving, like soft skills also are like very much defined by the job roles.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody talks about learning the business actually, like how it works, how is your organization working. So thank you so much.
Sure.
That was really very wise and specific. And thank you for being my guest and providing all your time. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. This was fun. We're done already?
Yes.
I'm ready for another 10 questions, as you can tell here. But no, thank you so much. If people want to find me, look for me on LinkedIn, Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer. Follow my stuff, reach out, send me an invite, or just follow it. I've also got a YouTube playlist. Search for me there, Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer playlist, where all my videos are. I've got 30, 40 videos there now.
Mm-hmm.
I've got everything from puppets and cartoons down to more serious, pragmatic stuff about the 5 pillars and the 4 C's and so on. But that's my role today, is just to push out as much content as I can to help people learn what we're talking about in the data space, and also share it with those who want to know that story too. So find me somewhere. Let's connect.
So definitely, I will provide all the links once I publish this podcast episode. So
Super.
I will provide all the details so that all the followers can connect to you directly and follow you and ask the questions or the guidance if they need any. So thank you so much, and hope all of you enjoy this episode. Until we meet, happy leading. Let's live together. Bye for now.